You are about to enter the Shockwave Skull Sessions podcast on shockwaveskullsessions.com. And now your host, Bob Nalbandian.
Oh, Johnny Rock.
Johnny Rock. Johnny Rock.
So, let me introduce you to my co-host and producer, Matt.
What's going on, John? How you doing?
Hey, dude. Is it Matt?
It's Matt, yes. Yeah,
Yes.
Nice to meet you.
Oh, because I can't understand the Bob father. He's got a dick in his mouth.
Right? Corleone over here.
Dude, show some respect. I am the Bob father. You know,
He's a Bob father. I know I don't have a voice for potting, but tough shit.
Your voice is better than mine. Hey, cuss all you want, dude. Tell all the dirty stories you want.
Are you going to be asking the questions, or Matt, are you going to be asking the questions?
No, you're going to be doing all the talking, dude.
Oh, God. What do you think, I'm Slowzower or Preston, for Christ's sake?
There ain't no questions, man. We're just rambling. That's how this goes.
All right.
It's funny, I was supposed to do a podcast with Don Jameson and Monty Pittman, and he's like, dude, your voice sounds fucking awful. This was Friday. My voice was worse. And I'm going, yeah, I sound like the fucking Godfather, man. You better show some respect. He's like, dude, you sound more like fucking, what's that fucking guy's name from Howard Stern? High Pitch Eric. I'm like, motherfucker. I'm thinking, dude, you're supposed to give me respect, and now you're telling me I sound like High Pitch Eric? Shit. And here I'm thinking that my voice will like intimidate some chicks, maybe increase my chances of getting laid.
Hey, chicks like this kind of voice sometimes.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? It's a little different.
I'm hoping. It hasn't worked for me yet. We'll see. We'll see after this podcast.
There we go, yeah.
Johnny Rod. Maybe the chicks will be lining up at my door. You never know. The original Johnny Rod. John Harrell.
Well, there's that fucker from Wasp who called himself Johnny Rod. So it was only two girls that called me that. One was she worked the box office at the Roxy in 1977 and 78. And that's when I met her. Right. And she came up with Johnny Rod. That's years before that guy did.
King Cobra.
Yeah, he looked like he was in King Cobra, was he?
He was. Yeah, that's where I started.
Yeah, okay.
So, dude, you got some fucking stories. Let's start from the beginning, Johnny Rod. Matt, you're going to have to chime in.
Sure, man. Yeah, yeah.
Voice.
Yeah, of course.
Otherwise, my voice is going to get really trash.
Really quick, yeah. So we wrote down some notes, Bob, brought up some topics we'll talk about, I guess. The first thing we'll talk about, I guess, is when you got started with Starsky and Hutch. Starsky and Hutch.
Yep. Yeah, it was the number one show on TV at the time. And I think it was, 20th Century Fox, but it was Spelling Productions.
What, 1976? 75?
No, I started in 77. But the show, I think, started in 75. I think it had already been on a couple years.
Right.
But I watched as a kid, when I was 15 or 16 years old, I watched it. Yeah, I think it was on ABC at that time, because I know at one point it changed networks. It's all foggy about that, but it was definitely 20th Century Fox, and it was staged 77 and 78, I think. Good times.
So you were the photographer?
I was a photographer, and I lived on Larrabee. My rent was $125 a month, and I was making $7.50 a week just from Starsky.
God damn. So those that don't know, you lived off Larrabee.
Gas was 53 cents a gallon, or 53 cents a gallon or something.
Right by the Whiskey A Go-Go, right?
Well, Larrabee is a block east of the Whiskey, and then it was a block down. And across the street was a big building, and Lita Ford lived there, and Joan Jett, Robin Leach from the Star magazine, and later became Rich Styles of Rich and Famous. Right. And Edwin Starr from War lived there, and a couple journalists from England.
Lita Ford, literally like probably 18 or something at that time, or.
Well, I was 19. Yeah, she was probably about 18. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you worked with Robin Leach, right?
Robin at that time worked for a tabloid called The Star. He was the Hollywood editor, and he heard that I worked on Starsky and Hutch, so he came across the street to my building, waited for the gate to open, I guess, and went up the stairs and knocked on my door. And he goes, "Hello, John." And I go, "The fuck are you?" I didn't know him. Why is he knowing my name, and why, So, he came in and told me what's going on, and he says, "Listen, I'll pay you $1,000 a week to give me 2 sentences, and I don't mean 3. If it's 3, you're going to piss me off. 1 or 2 sentences of something that happened on the set of the show. Come on, man. Seriously? $1,000 a week? What are you, nuts? Every Monday I had a check in the mailbox for $1,000. And I started getting checks from other tabloids that picked me up, that I didn't go after them. They came after me and started giving me these at-home celebrity layouts, where you interview them for half an hour and take some photos of them. They might have some crazy hobby, like Marla Gibbs from the Jeffersons. They sent me to her house, and she said she lived up by the Hollywood sign next to Griffith Park, next to the observatory. Mm-hmm. And she said she saw a UFO land right on top of the hill, and there was a beam going through her kitchen window. At the same time, we're sitting at her kitchen table, she talks about how she has a regular job because she doesn't believe in show business. Is not, she's afraid a carpet will be pulled out of her at any time. And so she starts talking. I said, what kind of work do you do? She says, I take reservations for Continental Airlines. And I go, what? You mean you get done with the show and then you drive to LAX and do? She goes, yeah. And I've had that job for a long time. I got 4 kids I have to take care of. And I went, oh, my God. So that was 2 stories that came out, and Robin was very happy. So he says, you're going to start writing for the Star now. I went, oh, great. Mom's going to love this. So as soon as I hit town, it was just game on. Photojournalism was very big in those days, and magazines, newspapers everywhere. And if you had a camera and if you had the talent of being able to take photos, were a photographer, and you could also write, that was huge. Robin helped me write. He asked me to write something for him, and I did. And then he edited it and showed me, this is the way the big boys do it. And that first paragraph has to grab you by the balls. And that you got to have a title that's going to grab you, too. Well, that title helped me out because looking at Creem magazine, buying Creem magazine when I was a kid, looking at all my favorite bands, they always had those crazy titles. Remember Creem used to put those funny captions under photos and that kind of stuff. So that always stuck with me because they had a calendar they put out every month. And one month, instead of saying this person's birthday, it said Mama Cass's last ham sandwich. Meaning she died on that day. And I'm like, that's fucking hysterical. So, when Robin started telling me you're on the right track, think of a great title. And that became half the fun of doing it, was coming up with these funny ass or great titles that would grab the reader. So now I'm writing, photographing, and being on the show. And the show went off the air about a year and 2 or 3 months later because the guys asked for $250,000 an episode, which in those days was like,
This is Starsky and Hutch.
Yeah, and if they could fast forward, 30 years, and Seinfeld's getting $18 million for 19 minutes of airtime a week.
Unbelievable. I know.
Well, $250,000 was not that bad,
Totally.
And it was a number 1 show. So anyway, that's how the writing came about. And then Robin gave me a Selectric typewriter because he bought himself a new one, and he says, "Here, so you don't have to go out and buy stuff. I'm giving you stuff." He gave me paper. He says, "Here, sit and write and just do interviews." And I started getting calls from him all the time, and I give him his 2 sentences a week. Just these odd things that would happen on the set because there was always something stupid that happened. It was a cool time, and I was just turned 20 years old. So
oh damn, wow.
I mean, I come here and all of a sudden I'm in this business already, and I didn't have to pay any dues. So I always say I started at the top, which I kind of did.
Well, you said they came to you. You didn't have to go to anybody, right? This was all people came to you looking for, to give you work.
Yeah.
Wow, times
no,
have changed.
I've never had to go out and get a job in my life. Never had to call people up and say, "Hey, man, I got to pay the mortgage here. Can you got anything going on I can shoot or anything?" No, it's everybody's always called me and given me work, whether it be Marshall, photos, PV, amps, Korg, all the manufacturers.
What did you do to get you into photography for Starsky and Hutch? Were you a pretty renowned photographer before Starsky and Hutch, or what attracted them to you?
Nothing. I had just moved to town to L.A. About 5 days before that.
Holy shit.
And I closed my eyes. I had a AAA map. I had a map of Los Angeles. I closed my eyes and just landed my finger and looked down and it said West Hollywood. I go, West Hollywood? What about Hollywood? Why is West Hollywood different than Hollywood? So I went there, and the first apartment I looked at was on Fountain, 2 blocks like east of La Cienega. I was at those corner ones that look like castles, had those rounded building.
Yeah.
You know, I rang the bell on that one, and they said, "Oh yes, it'll be $1,100 a month." And I'm going, "Oh shit, man, $1,100 a month." I said, "Dude, that's crazy." And I said, "Wow, I better keep looking." And then the second place I went to was a place on Larrabee, and when they told me it was $125 a month, and it was cleaning, it was nice. I was the youngest guy there. Everybody else was like late 20s and 30s. There were several actors living there. David Hasselhoff lived across the hall from me, and I was moving into my apartment, and he opened his door, and mine was open. He just kind of walked in. He goes, "Hi, hey, I'm David. I live across the hall." I go, "Oh, hi, David. I'm John." He says, "So what do you do?" I said, "I don't do anything." He goes, No. You got to say you got to do something. I says, "Well, play chess, screw, Blazing Saddles." You guys caught that. But I said nothing. I just dropped out of college, and I moved here. He goes, "Okay, you're in Hollywood. Somebody's going to ask you what you do. You make sure you tell them something." I said, "I don't have a job. I just got here. What are you, crazy? I don't understand." I didn't know anything about the entertainment industry, and I didn't know, that you bullshit everybody. And, so he was looking around. He goes, "Hey, is that a camera?" I go, "Yeah." He said, "You taking any photos?" And I just got my camera a few months before. I was not a photographer. I didn't want to buy it. I wanted to get a little pocket Kodak camera so I could just send 4x6 photos back to my family for them to see where I lived and that kind of stuff. He goes, no, you got to get a camera. You got to get a 35 millimeter. I said, "Well, I can't do all the lens stuff, and I'm not that bright." And he said, no, you got to get this camera and you'll be fine. Funny enough, it was the same camera that Annie Leibovitz first started using when she worked for Rolling Stone, at a young age, 19, whatever she was. David asked me, he says, have you taken any photos? I go, "Yeah, right there, the same box. There's a few in a folder there." And he's, "Wow, who is this?" I said, "That's Montrose in concert." He goes, "Who's this?" I go, "It's Boston in concert." So in those days, you could just walk with a camera into venues. Nobody stopped you, unless it was Aerosmith, and Steven would snatch that thing out of your hand and throw it. But I got free concert tickets because I worked at a restaurant, and across the street was the city newspaper. And every Friday, the entertainment guy would come in at happy hour after he got his paycheck, and he would have a drink or two, and he would talk to me, and we just became friends. And he said, "Hey, John, we're not going to review this band. You want to see them? Who are they called? Who's the band?" He goes, "Oh, it's Kiss." I go, "Fuck, yeah! Are you kidding me? Yes." And like the next week, it'd be Aerosmith. "You want to see him?" "Yeah." "Deep Purple, you want to see him?" "Yeah." It just kept going on and on until I saw about 30 concerts, and it was always front row center seats, 2 tickets. Always.
Oh, wow.
It was never second row, 15th row. No, it was always front and center.
So let's get this clear here. David Hasselhoff started the career of John Harrell, correct?
That's right.
See, Hasselhoff has done some good.
And he's famous for eating cheeseburgers off the floor now.
Exactly.
So I want you to know.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right, Bob. It was actually David who says, "Okay, next person asks you what you do for a living, you tell them you're a photographer." And I just played along with it. I said, "Okay, fine." Well, the next person who asked me was like 3 days later was Aaron Spelling.
Oh man.
Jeez, talk about being at the right place.
Yeah,
at the
you
right
ain't
time.
kidding.
I'm telling you, it's been a fairy tale. The whole dude, this shit doesn't happen.
No,
it does not
I've
happen.
never heard of this before. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why I'm lucky every day I get up.
Dude,
Except now that I'm
I was
divorced.
10 years too young. I missed the 70s. I grew up throughout the 80s, but I love that 70s scene.
The 70s were great because it was every band was a band, and every member in those bands, they were in that band. They weren't in 50 other bands like there are today.
Right.
I won't mention the names of some of them, but they're in this band. They have this. They got a side project. They're doing a side project with somebody else from another band. And it's like going on and on and on. It's been so diluted now, but that's because guys cannot live off of one band anymore.
Yes.
Music has changed. The whole business has changed, and that's what really irritating. But you're right. The 70s were great. Every band was different. There was no ripping off or competition as far as I could see back then as a teenager. But it was a great time. And then coming out here, and just 2 weeks before I move here, I'm watching Starsky and Hutch on TV. Now I'm on their turf, 20th Century Fox, taking their photos, directing them. That first thing that Spelling gave me was to take their photos. They just needed a promo shot. He said, I'll pay you $100. Take pictures of these two guys. And I'm thinking, Jesus Christ, okay, this is gay porn. The first thing that came to mind, he had like the little goatee mustache thing, like it's popular the last 10 or 15 years, a lot of guys have. And the only guys in those days that had that was like Al Goldstein at Screw Magazine and kind of porn dudes. Right. The guy that did Deep Throat, that guy, he had one too. It was like, that was like the thing. It was like a porn thing. And so when he had that and he said, take a picture of two guys, I'm like, oh, Christ. But that, I took it for some reason, and he picked me up in his Rolls Royce. He took me to the Polo Lounge for breakfast. I had a New York strip steak and hash browns, and I'm looking around the room. I don't remember what we even talked about, but I just remember sitting in this restaurant in Beverly Hills, and like everybody from I've seen on Ed Sullivan or The Tonight Show was in this restaurant reading the paper, reading the trades, and chatting. And I'm like wondering, did I die and I don't know it yet, because this was impossible for me to understand.
This story here, it's like Almost Famous kind of, right? I mean, you just...
Absolutely. No question about it.
So you started...
No question.
Your music stuff started at Creem magazine, but you worked for Ronald Reagan. Was that when he was president or governor?
No, neither. It was in between.
Wow.
He was governor. I think his last year's governor was 74 or 75, and I moved to Los Angeles in January 77, so I didn't know he had been governor of California. When you're a teenager, you don't give a shit about that stuff. You just care about music, banging chicks, baseball, normal shit. You don't think about who's the governor. You don't think in those terms. So I had no idea who he was. When the name first came up, it was even the guy did that movie with a monkey, or was there a chimpanzee or something involved? And yeah, but and that's all it was. I got a phone call, and this is now we're talking September of 1979, and I get a phone call from this PR firm in Beverly Hills. Starsky and Hutch is off the air. I had done 29 days working on a movie called Every Which Way But Loose with Clint Eastwood, and the Stars sent me to go and do that. Well, I ended up hanging out and shooting some stuff for them, but I was no longer union. I'd quit the union, thinking I'm getting so much work as a photographer and working for all these magazines, just not in America, but also in Europe. And I said, well, why do I have to pay all these dues and wait around and get checks, unemployment checks? That's not me. That's not my makeup. I like to work. So after I did that, I guess there had been one of those Republican dinners at the Century Plaza Hotel, which used to be on 20th Century Fox land. So this is all connecting. I'm at Fox, and here's Century City on the land they used to do war films on. And they're having a dinner, and I guess Ronald Reagan asked Clint Eastwood, he says, yeah, I'm looking for a photographer. And Clint must have said, well, you got this crazy kid that just did some stuff on Every Which Way But Loose. But the funny thing is, when I was doing photos, and I wasn't really working for Warner Brothers, Clint asked me, he says, hey, what's your name, kid? And I go, John. He says, you want to be one of the bikers in this film, or one of the Black Widows?
The Black Widow.
And I said to him, what a moron. I said, I'm not an actor. You don't have to act. We're going to have a mud puddle scene here, and you just go over to wardrobe. They'll put whatever you want, some chaps, vests, whatever you want. Pick out your own outfit, put your own outfit together, and just be one of the bikers. I was 152 pounds. I mean, seriously, could be like an anorexic biker up there. I just thought it was the silliest thing. And here's Clint Eastwood asking me, hey, and I'm going, dude, and I turned him down.
Oh, man.
Who the fuck does that? Who the fuck turns Clint Eastwood down? Do you want to be in my film? What a fucking moron. I still to this day shake my head and just go, Jesus. Not that I had any kind of talent that I could do that, but I wouldn't have probably any verbiage at all, no script, but that's fine. I still would have been, but I still turned it down. No, I'm a photographer. Well, I've done a few stupid things.
You kind of
like
regret,
that,
obviously, you kind of like sit there and think a lot like, oh man, what the fuck was I thinking? Like I should have done that. Or you kind of just chalk it up to like, well, I've had all this other luck. At least I'm still happy. And, I guess it's kind of something you're going to kind of, it's something you're going to take to your grave, killing yourself over? I don't think so, right? I mean, you've had so many other cool, great opportunities, so I guess this is just another, it's not that big of a deal, I guess.
But I still cringe at it. It's one of those things I go, oh, and Lemmy, my friend Lemmy always said, never have any regrets. They're useless. You can't do anything about them. I said, oh, okay. Yeah, I can't do anything about them now, but back then, I regret doing that.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I end up back at square one here. I'm going, oh, fuck, really?
Yeah.
But anyway, I get the phone call from this PR firm, and they're saying, yes, we'd like to go to Ronald Reagan's house and take some photos of him. And I go, oh, what kind of photos? Well, he's going to be doing some filming at his house, and you just kind of follow around and just take snapshots of whatever you think is going to be good. Okay. And I did. And they gave me the address to his house in Bel Air, and I drive up to it, and there's guys with shotguns and behind trees and sunglasses on. I'm going, wearing suits, and I'm going, what in the hell did I get into now? So, I got up there, and nobody, told me what to do, really. They were obviously filming, I guess they would be called video clips or video, and what they were was him saying, I'm Ronald Reagan, and I want you to endorse this candidate for governor or for mayor or whatever. He was endorsing different people. Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it was after he was governor. You understand? Because this is 1979 now, September. So I think his last year was like I said, 74, 75. But he was endorsing other people for different things, And that's what it was at his house. And it was a small crew, and they had all these suits around with sunglasses on and guns in their pockets, and it was weird. But I went up to him. I introduced myself to one guy. He says, oh, you want to talk to him over there? And I went to talk to that guy. And he said, yeah, just make yourself at home, John, and take photos when we're filming. If you get some shots of the camera guy and Mr. Reagan there sitting. And da-da. So I started focusing on Ronnie and taking photos of him, but not so much the crew. But I got some crew photos and just followed him around. And he never said a word to me. He never blinked. There was never any question. He didn't say, oh, what do you do, or anything like that. It was just, when he moved, I moved. I was with him. And I didn't get in his face. I stayed back a little bit. And when I had to get up closer, I would take a couple seconds, take a couple shots, step back, move away. He never looked at me weird or tried to point to me or direct me or anything like that. I had total control of what I was doing. And I kept going up to his house 2 or 3 times a week for, I can't remember, probably a month. I gave them a set of proof sheets, but I always kept the negatives. And they were paying me on top of it. So it was a kind of an odd situation, but I enjoyed it. And then one day I said...
Now, were you doing other photographs then, too?
Yeah. I kept doing stuff for Us Magazine and People and the tabloids. Back in those days, Us and People were photojournalism magazines. Mm-hmm. They were at-home stories with celebrities like Marla Gibbs, like I had mentioned to you. And I did a score of other people, Dana from Different Strokes, and all kinds of people from different the hit shows of that time, and it was usually for the tabloids. But I started getting calls from People magazine and Us to do these things. Now Us is like a red carpet magazine. It's nothing shadow of its former self. Owned by Jan Winter, who started Rolling Stone. But back there, that was part of Time Life, People magazine, and they'd call me up every now and then and say, hey, can you go over to this person's house and do this and do that, and it was those kind of things. So I enjoyed it. And I had a full schedule. I'd have 4 or 5 things set up every week. And so I just kept moving and kept doing things. One day the Birmingham Evening Mail, or the London paper, asked me to go to Roger McGuinn's house. And he was like the first...
Off the Birds, huh?
Yeah, he was like the first... I think he was the first rock guy I did, and that was 1977. And I was not... I was just shooting. They had a writer from England that lived here. Who lived across the street from me on Larrabee, actually. And we went to Roger's house in the Hollywood Hills. He had us sitting at the kitchen in his little house, and he had full cups of coffee, and I'm just sitting there, not saying a word. Roger kept giving me kind of glares like, what are you here for? What are you doing? Well, I had a fucking camera on my hand, so what am I doing? Take a guess here, Roger. And he lights up a joint. So instinctively, I said, oh, let's take a shot. And he took he's talking, and he's looking at the writer, and he takes his hand and just tips his coffee over, like brushed up against it so it fall over. This full cup of coffee, my camera was sitting on the table, and before the coffee hit, I just gently picked it up and pulled back in the chair, slid back so I wouldn't get coffee all over my lap, hot coffee. And he just kind of looked at me, and that was like a warning shot, in other words. So I didn't try to take any more photos. But he kept smoking the joint, and I got some other shots standing by the door. And he was a real jackass to work with. That was my first time actually being around somebody that didn't want to be photographed or didn't like photographers or whatever, like the press. So that will help me in a few years when I start shooting music. But I think he was the first rock guy I'd ever photographed. And of course I knew who he was. I think back in those times they called it earn as you learn. Right. Because there was no schooling, there was no art classes or taking photography in high school or anything like that. So I was completely a virgin. And I would look at magazines and go, wow, how'd they do this? Why is this picture so nice? Why is this contrast so good, And I'd go to a camera store and ask them. And there's one guy that always asks questions. Hey, how do I get this effect? He goes, put a green filter on and shoot black and white and use this kind of film, Kodak Tri-X. And don't set it at 400, set it at 320, but use this green filter on there, and everything you'll see changes. And I went, whoa. So that's how I learned, was asking questions.
Was Creem like your first actual music magazine? Was that 1980 or was that in the 70s?
I would say it was 83 because I had shot in 82. I think the first artist I shot was Joe Perry. I became friends with Joe Perry very quick. He left Aerosmith 3 years earlier. Yeah, I think he left in July of 79, Aerosmith, and this was spring of 82. So I just called up his manager, which happened to be Tim Collins, who got Aerosmith back together in 84 and managed them till the end of the 80s, I think. But he was his manager, and I said, hey, I work for this magazine, and blah, 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 and that's how I started shooting Joe. So every time he came to town, I'd shoot, whether it was the Golden Bear or whether it was the Country Club or the Palace on Vine Street, wherever he was, I was with him the whole time he was here. So we became friends. So I think Joe Perry was the first thing that got in Creem, and I believe it was late 82. Creem was my favorite magazine. When I was a kid, it was Hit Parader, it was Circus, and it was Creem. And Creem definitely stood way far above the other ones. Mm-hmm. Hit Parader was like fucking tiger beaters. It was like shaped little, But if my band was in there, if Alice Cooper was in there, I'd buy the fucker. Even if they just mentioned the title on the front, or if there's one photo of Alice in there, I'd buy it. Just because I was a fan.
Creem had that sarcasm about the writers, too. They all kind of hated metal, but they would feature it and write some sarcastic blurb about it.
Yeah, That was just the Detroit mind back then. I mean, remember everybody was coming out of the Iggy, and they had Motown, and I had all that stuff, and these writers had this certain sarcastic, but they were deep, and they knew their shit. That was the thing. They knew the history. Mm-hmm. And Detroit was a very historical place for music, at any rate. Sure. It's very rich and thriving. Yeah, I immediately stood up to that, and the writers at Classic Rock in England now, how great those guys are. Mm-hmm. That's what attracted me to it. And plus, there were great photos in there, and I see Bob Gruen's name and Neil Slozauer and a bunch of other guys, Neil Preston every now and then, and I got to know those names.
You and Slozauer were the two L.A. dudes that were not just the photographers, but you were like rock stars in your own right, You were like a part of the band, a part of their entourage.
But my bands were smaller. Neil was with Led Zeppelin, and I'm with Wasp. So, two different things. And I wasn't buddies. I wasn't doing blow and drinking Jack Daniels with these guys either. I was, photographing them when it was time to work, and that was it. I think Neil was more into it than I was. Not by choice, but just the way it was handed to me. I didn't try to make it any bigger. I didn't try to become big buddies or friends with anybody. But if it happened, they say, hey, let's go to dinner, or let's go here, let's go to the Rainbow. And, of course I did. But I think Slozauer, he lived it more. His name was very huge back then. I remember seeing it in all the magazines. So I said, this guy's good. He had a great look to his stuff. His studio stuff was magnificent. I went, wow, how did he get this? It was great. And the same for Neil Preston, who I think Slozauer worked for Neil Preston. Well, that's at least what Neil Preston tells me, that he worked for me. He learned it from me. But, and then Ross Half and I came up at the same time. So he was shooting music before I was, but we both started in 1977.
But he came out of England, right? Did he come out to the U.S. pretty early on, or was he mostly shooting in England?
Yeah, he's from London. Yeah, he made friends with a band that was starting out. They were called, they were really unknown. Def Leppard. So that was his first band. And he got on shooting for all the English mags right away. Wow. He sort of fell into it like I kind of did. I had to work at mine more. I didn't have a look. I didn't know what I had. I would just take pictures the way I felt. I didn't, have any kind of plan of a look or anything like that. And I used to get nervous about that. Oh, fuck, I don't have a look. There's not a look to myself.
You didn't, like you say, you kind of winged it, huh? You just kind of went with the flow?
I totally winged it, man. Yeah. And it made me kind of nervous. And then, in the 80s, when the Sunset Strip explosion was going on, I said, oh, my God. I was in Creem magazine all the time. Many, many covers with them, many posters with them, lots of work from them. But I was nervous because Neil had his look, his lighting look, and Ross Halfin had his lighting look. Ross happens to be, I think he's my favorite photographer. And everybody had a look. And I said, well, I don't have a look. What the hell? And why are these guys in here all the time, as much as I am? Because they've been around longer. I think Neil started when he was 16. He shot a Black Oak, Arkansas album cover, High on the Hog, for A&M Records. I think he was 16 when he did that.
I wonder if that's what inspired David Lee Roth for him to be Van Halen's photographer.
Oh, you fucking know it.
Of course.
Of course. I remember a thing at Hit Parader, and I just shot Black Oak's Ready as Hell album cover.
Great shot.
Thank you. And Jim Dandy was in town, and he had met me because I did something for him in People magazine. So we stayed kind of friends. So he said, where do you want to do this, John? This is my new look. He had like animal pelts and wrapped around. He looked like Conan, kind of. I said, hey, man, I got the perfect place. It's called the Bat Cave. It's in Hollywood. Yeah, well, let's go. So we did. We parked that little park down there on Bronson, and we walked up the hill. And as soon as I walked up there, because somebody told me about it, I didn't look at it before about it. I did not go there and scout out anything and look at it. As soon as I walked up the hill, the first thing that hit me was, that's the Aerosmith Night in the Ruts album cover. Holy shit. Oh, my. I walked in the cave. I go, wait a minute. This is where they did Invasion of the Body Snatchers, when the townspeople are chasing them at the end. They're under those planks. They're running above on top of their heads. I said, holy shit. So my whole childhood flashed in front of me. I said, JD, let's do it here, man. So I put a flash. I didn't have any lighting or anything. We're in the front of the cave, the mouth of this cave, and he just gets up and he had the sword in his hand. He put it back, and I shot, and just a glint off the sword looked like it was photoshopped on there before it was photoshopped, And it came out, and that was like the third shot of that roll I took. And he looked at the photos the next day, and he says, this is the album cover. You nailed it. Perfect. I went, wow, that was easy. Everything was coming easy to me. Everything was by kind of accident, or not accident, but just the right timing. Mm-hmm. I guess timing was the most important ingredient as far as a career or photos I was taking. And something developed out of that I just kept continuing. If it didn't work, I didn't do it. But if it kept working, I just kind of went with it. But I didn't question it. I just kept doing it. So everything that was coming by. So I think, that was my first album cover I ever took, was that Ready as Hell Black Oak album. Second one came a few months later.
You've done a ton of album covers, right?
Well, I don't know how many covers I've shot, but as far as albums and covers, backs, insides, or just a photo in there, it's over 300.
Wow, damn.
Somebody asked me one day, and I said, I have no idea, but I had copies of everything I'd ever shot. So I counted them. I go, can I count right? This is impossible. So I think it's over like 311 or something like that. I know the last one I ever did was the Mick Fleetwood, his Zoo record a few years ago. And that photo was taken in 1986, when he was doing a video. And they were looking for a shot of Mick with the band Zoo, his side band, that hadn't been published before. So I said, how about this? And they went, oh, that's it. So that's the whole back of his record. So that was the last one I did. And the one before that was a Poison greatest hits, the second or third greatest hits they had. It just kept on going. But there's ones that I've done the entire things of. But a lot, I had a lot of covers. I should actually investigate that and go through all my boxes of albums and see how many covers I had. But there's quite a few. I'm sure there's at least 50.
So what led you to Burrn magazine in Japan?
Well, reflecting back on me being nervous, and I'm going, is this all there is to life? Is these magazines and this thin, shitty paper, and the printing isn't very good? Because I'd been to England, and I saw Creem, and I'd seen the other magazines, and I'm going, how come these look better? Look at the printing. Mm-hmm. Even the albums I got from England for that Black Oak, Arkansas album, they sent me 5 of them, copies of 5. And the printing was much better than America. I go, wait a minute, something's going on here. Why is the UK, why do they have better printing than here? I loved what I was doing, but I just wanted something that was cooler. I was like, always had a Spinal Tap kind of mentality. No, it's got to be on 11, man. You can't be at 8 or 9. That's like phoning it in. You got to be on 11. Well, I was at somebody's house one day and talking about it, and this guy he flinged the Burrn magazine, the brand new Burrn magazine over to me. And I went, holy shit, this is like, look how thick this is. I went, oh my God, look at the color, thick cover stock. Look at the paper. Oh my God, it was beautiful. Even the black and white pages was beautiful. I'm going, this is what I'm talking about. And I look at it and I go, wait a minute, what is this, fucking Chinese? What the hell is this? And he goes, no, that's Japanese, man. It's a new magazine out of Japan. And that was October 94, their first issue. So this was probably December of 94. I'm sorry, 84. Didn't mean to say 94. And I went, oh my God, I got to get in this magazine somehow. Well, I just shot this guy. I shot his album cover in September, and he did a video in November and early December. And that's the last shots I had of any rock shots that I thought maybe they've heard of this guy. So I sent the magazine. I had their address in the magazine that was given to me. I sent them the photos, and I get a reply back from them. They were going crazy. How did you get these? These are great. Where did you get these from? I actually called them on the phone, hoping they'd speak English. And, yeah, there was a girl that spoke English, and she was translating to the editor-in-chief. And I said, well, he's a friend of mine, and, I shot his album cover. You shot that album cover? Oh, my God. And they were all excited. I mean, why is he such a big deal over there? Well, his name is Yngwie Malmsteen. And I didn't know he'd been to fucking Japan. So, he was a huge star over there, and I sent him, photos that nobody had. And that was my first thing with them. They already had people in Los Angeles. They already had people in New York. And there was no outside people or contributors working on the magazine. It was all in-house. Everybody was Japanese but me.
Why was the print so different in the U.S. compared to, say, the U.K. and Japan? Was it just
Well, the paper was it was a better quality. It was thicker paper. Mm-hmm. Your fingerprints didn't come off on it. Mm-hmm. It was just had a nice pearl finish to it. If you used it back in the day being 10 years ago, if you went to a photo lab and asked for a black and white print, they'd say, do you want studio gloss? Do you want matte? Do you want this? You had different styles of paper. They would make photos. It was what we used to call studio gloss. There was a gloss to it, but it was still something your fingers didn't show up on. Okay. And it just had a nice feel to it. It was thicker paper. And Burrn magazine actually uses a thick color cardstock kind of paper. Yeah. It's not like real thin shit like you've seen over here anywhere. It's the only magazine I've ever seen of its kind, actually. And that's what appealed to me. Oh, here's something that is its own. And that's what I was very much into. I wasn't into posers or, things that looked like other things. I was into shit that was original. And that's what always attracted me with bands, with photos, with magazines, everything. I always liked the original or, something that was its own. So that's what appealed to me. And it was real thick. It was like 300 pages. It was like, wow. What's this thing cost? Like $80? I mean, I couldn't imagine. But if you went to Tower Records on Sunset, they would have Burrn magazine, like 2 or 3, 5 copies every month, And eventually they cut out their LA photographer completely. But anyway, he was gone. As soon as they saw my Yngwie stuff, they went nuts. And they'd call me up every now and then. So they broke their own rules. There was no outside people working on the magazine, but they said, hey, we've got to get this guy in here. Then when they hired me as the photographer for the U.S., they got rid of the New York people, and the writer was in L.A. She didn't seem to show interest in working in heavy metal music too much. So my boss said one day, the editor-in-chief, he goes, hey, I want you to do a review of, and I don't even remember the show, to be honest with you. I want you to do it. I said, well, I don't know what to do. Well, just write down what you feel. turn around and look at the audience. When they're playing a certain song, what's their faces look like? Are they happy? Or are they going, oh, he played it wrong? Or, make sure you have details of everything. So I was writing these 7,000, 8,000 word fucking reviews because I didn't know what the magazine said. I didn't know what they wanted. But they kept telling me, you're nailing it every time. You're exactly what we want. And so I was getting a lot of pages in there. And then finally they said, okay, can you go do an interview with this person? And again, I don't know who the first person was. But now we're in 1990. Okay. And sometimes I open it up with a story of years before when I was a kid, seeing them in concert or whatever. I talk about it. A cute little opener there makes people kind of smile. And then the second paragraph would be getting into it. Okay, I'm at his house. We're sitting outside. There are hookers everywhere. There's strippers. They got barbecue food going on, and it's noisy. So I asked to go inside the house so we can get this interview and be serious. And I would just write it. And whatever I gave them, the editor would love it. He never edited it out. He never got upset. He never said that wasn't right. That was bad. They just encouraged me. Everybody, that was my thing with my career. Everybody always encouraged me. So I just kept going for it. But my thing was also to always make sure I was given quality and also that I was doing the absolute best. And I always thought of all my work is what would I, as a fan, want to be reading? And that's how my questions developed. And so many artists have told me over the years, we're talking about 29 years now with music artists, they always say, God, sitting down with you is just like sitting down with your bud, just talking. It doesn't sound like you're sitting there with questions written out on a pad. And that's right. I don't write questions out. That has no feeling to it. That's just dead. It's just like corporate, and I do not like corporate.
So you started with Burrn in '84 and still going strong. Doing work for pretty much exclusively now, or you still do other stuff?
It's been that way since they made me the U.S. correspondent in '90. Okay. So let's say January of '85 when I sent them that first package, or maybe I sent it in December of '84, but they got back to me and said, oh, yes, we're going to buy all. And they bought all the photos I sent them. I sent them 25, 28, something like that. And they bought every photo of Yngwie. Like I said, I had no idea he had been a huge star there. But the first band, this came from New Image as well. There was a guy working there named Bruce Duff.
Yeah, we had him on. He was on our last episode.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. Well, Bruce, he was a young publicist then. He also wrote for a couple things, including Music Connection. He was known as Screaming Lord Duff. Yep. And him and I became kind of buds. And I started hanging out in New Image all the time and got to meet Uli John Roth and Butch Patrick, who I shot his album. Or not his album, it was actually a 45. Yeah. From the Munsters. And that's how I knew Alcatraz. And I met Truman. You got to shoot my band, man. You got to shoot my band. Okay, fine. And that's when I met the whole band, and Yngwie and I became friends. Yngwie was funny because he was young too and naive, like I was when I first moved here. And I'm better than anybody, man. I'm the best man. I am this man. Everything was man. When I shot his first album cover, he told me, now listen, man, I want this girl holding my guitar on the cover, and I want fire all around her. I said, okay. He goes, listen real carefully. And I'm fucking serious, man. Make sure she has red fingernails, man. Bright red fucking fingernails. I said, okay. He goes, you can do that? I go, yeah, of course I can do that. And of course, I don't know, how the fuck am I going to get fire into a... I've never done this shit. But you always say, yeah, that's what Hasselhoff taught me. You say yes, and then you figure out a way to do it before it's time to do it. Well, my neighbor happened to be a special effects guy for Warner Brothers, and he says, well, if you want it around her, it's going to be kind of difficult. I said, why don't we do maybe a curtain in front and a curtain of fire in the back of her? But when he set up everything, he put on the propane tanks and lit it. It looked like a fucking barbecue. And I looked at him, I go, dude, it looks like we're going to have a barbecue, like we're going to do fucking steaks or hamburgers out here. What the hell? He says, oh, do you want it all like a fire? I go, yes, that's what I asked for. He goes, oh, no problem. He takes out this big tube of rubber cement and does a big fucking wad like squeezing toothpaste. And then he lights it. And then the flame took that rubber cement and made it, and that's the fire. That's what made the fire on that album cover. And it was the first shot I took of 6 rolls of film. I've had a lot of first as far as photography that I've done. It was that first frame. I don't know what it is. And why does the Polaroids always come out better than the actual shoot? I always wondered that. I says, okay, we'll go with the first one. I always look at the first. That's it. It's a cover. But that's how that happened. And then MTV had put something on their music news. LA photographer John Harrell has used special effects on Yngwie Malmsteen's new debut record. And I went, I heard that. I went fucking ape shit. I called him up. I said, what are you guys talking about? Special effects. What do you mean? Well, obviously you weren't crazy enough to light a fire. I said, I got news for you ladies. I am fucking crazy, and that is real fucking fire, and I can show you the Polaroids of it. And they never gave an apology, but they did change the story next time it came on. Mm-hmm. So that kind of, I said, well, I'm getting somebody's attention. That's good. Like Alice Cooper always said, as long as they spell your name right.
Yeah. We want to talk about, Bob was mentioning to me that you're kind of the curse photographer. Yes. I guess you did photographs for a lot of musicians who, the last photographs of them before they had passed away, including, I believe he said Lemmy, and he had mentioned Dimebag, but I don't know if that is correct.
Well, yeah, there were three who I call the Holy Trinity. Lemmy being one. Okay. Dimebag, I thought, but what happened was 2 or 3 weeks before he was assassinated, he played L.A. at the Fonda, with his band, Damage Plan. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's when I last saw him. And that was soon after, soon before he died. And I think it was the first week it was the same day, it was December 8th, same day that John Lennon was killed. Mm-hmm. Yeah, in 2000, I think he was 2004, yeah. And he was here in November in L.A. with Damage Plan. But I had shot him a few months before at his house in Dallas with his brother, actually. And Dime was great. It was a cover for Burrn. And Dime just pulled out his Escalade and his Mercedes out of the garage. It had just been drywalled and finished, not painted or anything. He took all these spray cans like he was going to tag the wall, and he made it like camouflage and put up barbed wire and stuff, and that was the cover. He says, is this okay, John? Is it okay, brother? I go, that's fucking beautiful. You just fucked up your walls. He goes, oh, fuck that. It's okay. It's for a cause. I said, okay, thank you. And that was last time I was at his house was then. Did you ever get a chance to go to their strip club there in Dallas? No, I didn't. The thing with me is there was some. It's just part of the action when you're doing this kind of work. You're going to get involved with certain substances that. So with those two motherfuckers, you're going to be done for the day. I mean, could I drink a whole bottle of? No, because I quit everything in '85. Okay. That was like the end of it. So there was no way. 20 years later, I'm going to start up. Put yourself in that position. With those guys. Yeah. I mean, I flew in and flew out of Arlington, so it was like, that's it. Gotcha. Okay. But, no, I didn't make it to him. And Vinny and I stayed in touch, actually. One of the worst assignments I was ever given by my magazine was, can you talk to Vinny and interview him about what happened? And I'm like, no, please don't ask me this. Because I still go by that place every time we did a session in L.A. What kind of food do you guys want? Do you want me to get Indian food? Do you want pizza from the Rainbow? What do you want? And they always said the same thing. The only thing they would eat in L.A. was Del Taco. So I have to go to Santa Monica and Highland. There was a Del Taco standing there. Mm-hmm. The only one in Hollywood. And that's where they always made me take them at night. Hey, John, before you take us back to the hotel, can we stop at Del Taco? And I go, oh, Christ. You guys don't like the Rainbow? You don't like pizza? No, fuck no. Hell no. No, we just want Del Taco. And they get sacks of this shit. So every time I go by there still, I still get a little, tear in my eye. But because I think of Dimebag and I think of Vinny now, Mm-hmm. Those are two great, great guys and taken way, way before they should have been. And so I have a soft spot for both of those guys. But yeah, Lemmy, I was the last person to photograph Lemmy in a photo session. Not live, okay, but a photo session, and also Pat Torpey, the drummer for Mr. Big, and that was sad too because Pat was very much into health, organic, never smoked, never drank. He lived in the Hollywood Hills. He'd run 3, 4, 5 miles a day. When Mr. Big wasn't touring, he would still go to Mates rehearsal, and he would rehearse 5, 6, 7, 8 hours a day, every 5 days a week. He still did it. Even when they were dormant, he still went and rehearsed. He never stopped practicing. I went to his house because I did a feature on him for the magazine. I hadn't talked to him in a couple years, and we were friends. I'd see him at the grocery store. I'd see him at the mall. He was shaking so bad. I said, "Oh my God, Patty." He goes, "It's okay, John. It's okay." I said, "Oh my God, I had no idea." He says, "It's okay." He was always the one that was the positive guy. "It's okay. Don't worry about it. Everything's going to be great. Everything's going to be fine. All going to turn out okay." And we sat down, and his arm kept shaking. You know, when you're not in a position like that, you really don't think about the whole thing. And then I find out when we finished our interview and our photos, I said, "Well, at least you can sleep at night." And he goes, "John, when you have Parkinson's and you're shaking, just because you go to sleep doesn't mean the shaking stops. It keeps going. You shake like this 24 hours a day?" He goes, "Absolutely." But he was positive that everything would work out, and I was very disturbed. That was in November. 3 months later, getting the phone call, a little over 3 months, he had passed, and I was just devastated. So there's been a lot of sadness, and Lemmy is the one guy who, I knew him a long time. I knew him 33 years, almost 34 years, and he was always a great person, and people don't know that about him, or a lot of them do now, but testimonials you've heard from different people, but he was the greatest guy in the world, and even if he knew he had cancer, he would have never told you, because he didn't want to ruin your day. That's the kind of guy he was. He would keep things and hold things inside of him. He wouldn't tell you. He didn't even tell me. I remember telling his assistant, I go, "Hey, I think he might have pneumonia, because he's coughing a lot. Get him checked out before you head out of here." And that was 4 months before he died. That's when they played the Shriners Hall downtown. That was the first date of their U.S. tour. Before sound check, I did a photo session with him. One of those shots are hanging at the Rainbow. If he's sitting at his seat at the Rainbow in the outside bar facing sunset, the photo is right behind him on the side of his statue.
Yeah, I know that photo, yeah.
Yeah, so that was one of the photos, and he was as relaxed as could be and funny, and he held up a middle finger. He says, "Give me two middle fingers," or "Give me two fingers," and he held up two fingers on one hand, like a peace sign. He was just the clown he always was, but he was still different that day. He had a cane with him. I go, "What's with the cane?" And he goes, "Oh, the diabetes has gotten in my legs, John." I went, "Oh, okay. Do you want to be photographed with the cane?" No, can't photograph me with the cane. I said, "Okay, fine. But I had no fucking clue that he was ever going to pass. I had no fucking idea whatsoever. We thought we were going to be dead, and he'd be like 130 and still ruling the Sunset Strip.
I know.
That's what I always thought, and I really thought that. In my head, I really thought he's going to outlast all of us. And that was the darkest fucking day when I got that phone call. It was a Monday morning. He had just turned 70 a couple days before.
Yeah, that big
3 days before, I think. I'm sorry?
I said he had that big party at the whiskey.
That's right. That was about 2 weeks before. And I asked his manager, Todd, who is a great, lovely man. I said I did an interview for the new record. I interviewed Lemmy, but I need to shoot new photos to go with it. He allowed me to do that. I owe that to Todd for the rest of my life. So that's how that happened. So if it wasn't for Todd, it never would have happened. But we talked for 5 or 6, 7, 8 minutes, and we just kept talking because we always had great conversations. So I got what I wanted. I was happy. We did the photo session. Yeah, when he passed away, that Monday, December 28th, and I got the call, and I was getting ready to go do the first of the last 3 Motley Crue shows, the tour, the end of the tour. And I was ready to call Nicky, and so I emailed him. I didn't want to call him. I said, "Hey, Six, Lemmy just died. I can't do the show tonight with you guys." He goes, "Hey, we're filming the third one, and tomorrow's full up with photographers. You got to do it. It's the end." I said, "Well, I'll get you on the next tour." And I realized what I just said. I go, "Fuck, this is the end. I have to go." He goes, "You'll do it, man. You'll do it. Don't worry." So I was so depressed, loading my shit up and getting ready to go down to the Staples Center to shoot that. I love Motley, but it was Lemmy, and this is the only man in my life, including my own father, by the way, that I ever was this affected by it, by a death. And weird. Just a wonderful, nice, honest gentleman. He was a fucking gentleman. He'd always listen to you. And he remembered everything. That last day I saw him, the last day of that show he did, and the photo session that last day in August, because it was like 4 months, and then he passed. He said to me, he says, "I heard you just got divorced." I go, "Yeah." He says, make sure you stay in your daughter's life, John. I looked at him and I says, what do you mean, my daughter? Your daughter, Alyssa. I go, how the fuck do you remember that? He said, I met her when she was 9 months old. And he remembered that shit. This guy, you couldn't bullshit him at all. He gave me trouble about something. I told him when I was, in the mid-'80s, maybe it was even 83 or 84. You know what would be great? To get a shot of you when you're getting on the airplane flying back to England, right? He goes, yeah. The captain, they always say, hey, come on in. They always say to the little kids, hey, come on, sit in the seat, I said, we can talk them into, I can go on the plane with you and get a shot of you sitting wearing the captain's hat like you're going to fly the plane. He goes, that's a great idea. Let's do it. Set it up, John. He still gave me shit about that till the day he died.
Talk about your book.
I've written 9 books for them. The 9th one is coming out in June, and it's on classic rock. But the rest of them have been, the first 6 were L.A., the strip bands, Motley Crue and interviews with those guys, Guns N' Roses, members of all those bands, over 100 people, and there's 10 people in each book. Books 7 and 8 were the start of thrash metal in the U.S., the beginning of thrash metal in the U.S. So I got that last book came out Halloween in 2018. Okay. So this next book coming out is number 9, and it's on classic rock with Frank Marino, Alice Cooper, Robbie Krieger, Carmine Appice, them talking about when they started in the early days and what it was like being on Ed Sullivan. I write books and I still do live shows. I still do full-on interviews for Burrn. That is my time. They keep me 24/7 most of the time. So I don't have time to do anything else. Lemmy gave me the name Shooter. Lemmy gave me a Motorhead jacket for the Orgasmaton tour. And it said Shooter on the front because they all had their names, Wurzel and Lemmy. They all had their little names. And I said, well, how about me? I was just being funny and sarcastic. He said, well, what about me? Just being a little asshole. And then he turned and looked at me. He says, you're a shooter. I go, shooter? The hell's that? He goes, you shoot? And I went, yeah, I guess I do. Well, you're a shooter, okay? And I said, fine. Well, next thing I know, he's presenting me with the Motorhead tour jacket with Shooter on it. My editor-in-chief, when he came here, I was wearing that. My byline ever since has said John Shooter Harrell. Whether it was just an interview or photos, it's always said John Shooter. So I embrace it now.
John, are the books in English or just in Japanese?
No, they're not. Unfortunately, they're just in Japanese. And they print up like 25,000 each one. The thrash books, I think, were more like maybe 10,000 copies, but every one of them is sold out, which is good. So I'm doing something right. You can't argue with success.
John Harrell. Anything else, my friend, you want to add before we close this off?
No. That is it for me, kids.
Well,
Thank you very much.
All right, John, thanks.
All right, man. Have a good one.
It made me sound good. I have a terrible voice.
Well, you think you
sounded great.
You think you have a terrible voice? Fuck you.
Yeah, but I'm not the Bob father.
The Bob father.
Take care, guys. Matt, nice meeting you.
Take care. Thank you for listening to the Shockwave Skull Sessions podcast. Subscribe and listen to all episodes by going to our pages on iTunes, Spreaker, YouTube, Spotify, and more. You can listen to all other episodes and access up-to-date information and news on the Shockwave Skull Sessions podcast by going to our website at www.shockwaveskullsessions.com. Email all comments, questions, and suggestions to shockwaveskullsessions@gmail.com.